Guggenheim with FIBA. There's been some reports circulating about the prize money for the World Cup. I just was wondering if you can maybe clarify where the money comes from and where it's distributed.
There's no prize money for the World Cup, just to be clear. FIBA is supporting the federations in covering a lot of their costs. You probably saw in our recent Congress that directly or indirectly we have contributed more than 80 million to the federations and into their costs over the 4 years. We have one of the biggest insurance programs in sports, and it is equal. It's exactly the same insurance program for men and women players. We also cover now 3 extreme wheelchair basketball players, and that costs us in the cycle. To put also some figures in the context, we expect in the next 4 years we budgeted more than 15 million for just the FIBA players insurance. The contributions to the teams that come to the World Cup are contributions to their expenses. There is no prize money, and I think, I don't know if it is public or not, but I have no problem to share the numbers with you. We contributed 50,000 Swiss francs to every federation for their preparation costs, and that came on the back of the Spain World Cup, when we started on the road to China to understand that our clubs, not only the NBA clubs but also the FIBA clubs, have been upgrading constantly the service to the players. So our federations in the preparation, they had really high costs. So we contributed. Back then we paid actually 100,000 before China to each federation. This time we said we allocate half of this amount to cover one cost, which was the single rooms, and we paid 50,000. And then for those who stayed longer in the tournament, the top 16, we allocated another 100,000, because what the federations pay extra during the tournament is very high amounts for expenses. They have extra staff. I still remember that the first picture I got from our staff here in the Philippines was Montenegro truck arrived, because Montenegro had a truck of luggage. To give you a little bit of sense how much work, how much logistics goes around the servicing of our players. So it's an entire operation, the national team, and that's what we are contributing in terms of expenses. So the central board has decided there is no prize money in national team competitions of FIBA, and what we generate in terms of resources as a non-for-profit organization is then distributed according to our development programs and other distribution mechanisms across the countries, all 212 members of FIBA.
Question over here, gentleman in the red shirt, yes.
Hello. Jan Klaswil, French magazine Basket Le Mag. You talked about attendances in your opening statements, and I was a bit surprised that here in Manila, in a country so in love with basketball, the arena was not sold out for every game. And I talked with a lot of people here, and they all told me the same thing, that tickets were way too expensive for them. So don't you think there's something wrong about that? Thank you.
Thank you. The pricing of the tickets, which was determined by the locals but reviewed by FIBA, so we have our share in this, of course, and we were part of this process. For some categories, was not successful. I can say that this is one of the major debriefing points we'll have. I was several times in a venue where the fourth and fifth tier were full. The first tier was full, and the second and third were not. So that's where you see immediately the impact of pricing. And this happened several times. So we can say perhaps the second and the third tier were higher priced than would have been the market acceptable price. That said, when the local team is playing, it's difficult to fill up the other venue that is playing at the same time, because those who are not in the venue will watch their national team on TV or on their phone. And we did have here, if I'm not mistaken, 50 plus games to fill in the venues. Indeed, we would have liked to have a little bit higher attendances here in Manila. Overall, we are happy with how it worked, considering also that in some cases we may have had a big storm just before the game that really caused a traffic jam, and we had the venue half empty at the beginning and only 75% full at halftime. Or some people having bought a ticket then did not arrive or decided not to come. These are indeed, you're right, in some pricing categories. If we were not right in our judgment before the tournament, and this is something for sure to review for Doha, because there all 92 games are in the same city. Of course, there people will be able to buy their tickets from the moment that their team is qualified. You know where they will play. Here we had the additional element that you had to wait until the draw to see where your team is playing, and that changed the plans of several of our traveling fans.
Question up here in the middle, please.
P. Yahoo Japan News. It was announced that ticket for Japan against Germany was sold out, but there were a lot of empty seats due to no show, and those tickets were not sold in general public. How did you feel when you learned about this, and what do you think FIBA needs to prevent this problem from happening again?
I'm not aware about what happened for this exact game. I have to be fully transparent with you. We like it very much when we sell out the tickets, but then sometimes people don't show up. I don't know if these were complimentary tickets, so partner tickets, or sponsor tickets, or tickets that were part of a package, perhaps of a travel agency or otherwise. So I don't have a specific answer for that particular game. I do know that sometimes when we have an urgent weather condition or otherwise, some people may decide not to come last minute. And the problem for us is it's extremely difficult and risky, especially for a semi-final, to at one point in the game say to someone you can take that seat, because the person who paid a high amount for that seat, as we heard just now, maybe a very high amount, may show up late. So we have been quite delicately dealing with this, moving people around in the venues, because the owner or the one who paid for a seat should be able to find their seat. I didn't come to my attention that there were so many empty seats. To be honest with you, I was at the game, but if you say so, of course, that's the case. I don't know if it was a symptom or it was something more systemic behind it, but we will look at this, of course. Thank you.
I see one more question over here in the back.
Dennis Lejubo, MTN TV Plus South Sudan. Once again, congratulations on a very successful FIBA World Cup. Just a question. So we saw 5 African countries represented in this World Cup for a continent of 54 countries. Do we see increase in the number in the future?
I don't think this is in the plan for 27. I do see the increase, first of all, on the quality of preparation. The 5 teams that came here were better prepared than the 5 teams that came in 2019. That's a fact, and that's something I acknowledge, and I congratulated the 5 presidents of the federation. Spoke to Luol as well for the fantastic fairy tale of South Sudan making it to the Olympics. I would connect also the success of the BAL, the Basketball Africa League, our partnership with the NBA, in improving the level of our African players. I don't think it's an accident that in the 3rd season of the BAL, the MVP was not, as in the first 2 seasons, an import player, a US player, or Virgin Islands, that was the first season. Omot was the MVP, a South Sudanese player, in the Rwanda finals that I also attended in last May. So I do see the link there, and I believe that the more the BAL grows and the more clubs around Africa really become more systematic in developing players, together with the work that we do through our office in Abidjan, I think the potential of Africa is obvious. I don't need to say it. It has been stated several times. Now, whether we will reallocate the quotas, that's a good question. If we stay with 32, which is currently the plan, if you take a quota in favor of Africa, you have to take it away from someone else. So we don't have indications in that respect for the moment. So for 27, we'll as all indications are. For the moment, continue with the same continental allocation, but I can tell you the rankings are continuously monitored, and Africa is all the time more relevant in these rankings.
Final question for the Secretary General. Yes, up here. Can we get a microphone?
Sir, Dennis Hilanga from Radio Pilipinas. When the Angola team lost to Dominican Republic in the preliminary stage, Coach Pep Claros has called on to FIBA to disallow the naturalization of players, as he said that it slows down the development of local players. What is FIBA's take on this? And the second question is, for you, what is your overall assessment of the Manila hosting of the World Cup?
I start with the last. Manila has been an excellent host. I don't think it's easy to find anywhere else in the world this level of service to the visitors. Always with a smile, always with kindness, always with a solution-oriented approach. I can only express how grateful FIBA is to the Philippines and to the city of Manila. From the top of the government, the head of state received us a few months ago, and he came to our opening game, as you know, to the volunteers that take care of you, of us, here in the venues and in our hotel. So we're grateful to them. On the naturalization, as I did earlier, and also on the topic of changing of from one country to another, the one naturalized player rule is there to stay. It is one. And perhaps I didn't mention it when I was answering the earlier question about Bahamas. Sometimes when a player like that changes, falls into the naturalized player slot. So even if several change, it doesn't mean that all of them can play. So this rule is there, and it will not become 2, and it will not become 0. The Central Board consensus is clear on that, and I think that the rule of FIBA is one of the strictest out there. So I have much more criticism of how strict the rule is than how relaxed the rule is. So I take the comment, of course, and I know what Angola feels, or what, for example, other countries, I don't want to mention now names, in the continent feel, that do a lot of work on development. They invest, they play the under-16s, they play under-18s, they develop players, and then another country comes and they just bring diaspora players that were trained with 0 cost for the federation by another country, and they bring them into the national team. I know several of our federations feel like that. The other federations say, no, these are our blood, these are our relatives, these are our sons and daughters. So that is a difficult balance for us to make there.
Thank you. This is it for today.
We have a couple
Thank
of
you very
more.
much.
There are not too many. Let's take a couple of more. There are 2 more.
Okay.
There were not too many hands. Let's take.
Let's move over here. Yes, can we get one microphone? Either one.
Hello, Mr. Secretary General. I would like to ask you, because that was also mentioned by Coach Zagklis, do you think that in the future, I'm not talking about the next World Cup, maybe there should be a restriction of how the continental championship and the FIBA World Cup are allocated throughout the summers? Because there is an indication that a lot of NBA stars are not going to play back-to-back in the World Cup and the Olympics.
That's a difficult one. That's a difficult one because we took the big decision to have one summer free, essentially from a major tournament. And that is 18, 22, 26. It's the summer of the Women's World Cup. Then we say the calendar has essentially 3 pillars. The 2 major world events, with the Olympics being our showcase, only for 12 teams, but still the event that has more eyeballs than any other sports event on the world on it. The World Cup, which is the heart of our ecosystem, the flagship event, but really brings most of the resources to FIBA and its national federations, and what allows us also to measure development. It's 32 teams deep. It is the most difficult tournament to win, and you saw that the link to the Olympics made this tournament so interesting. I really congratulated my team for the competition format, because it was not only who wins the Naismith Trophy, it was not only who goes for the medals, it was not only who goes for the direct Olympic spot, then it became who goes to the direct OQT spot. And at the end of the day, last game Philippines-China, it was about the OQT spot, because being 22nd or 29th makes a big difference. Same for New Zealand versus Egypt, that we're playing a 17-32 last classification game, and they were giving it all. So I don't think any other World Championship or World Cup in any sport has, at this late stage of the classification game, so much interest and so much meaningful game. So, and if we didn't have two Europeans, or if France was one of the two Europeans in the semis, yesterday's game would be do or die for the Olympics, for a European team. So this link between our two top world level events is something that is very difficult to sacrifice. The back-to-back is a reality, indeed, but at the same time, we should also look at it on a 4-year cycle. And for some of our players that prioritize the World Cup and the Olympics, yes, it is a commitment, but it is, compared to the past, only 2 major tournaments in 4. But of course, Eurobasket is very important for us. The America Cup, the Asia Cup, the Afrobasket has a tremendous tradition in Africa. So, as I said recently, wherever we have the players available, we will give them the best possible service. We were very happy there were last year so many available in the Eurobasket. Some of them were not available. They are this year in the World Cup. And I think what we have to do is really provide the utmost conditions that we can afford with our hosts, for the players to represent their country and say, you know what, I want to be back. You know, I like this. This is the experience of my life. So I hope that's what we gave to them in this tournament. And let's face it, no matter what club you play for, the only case you'll make it to the front of the newspapers in your country is if your national team goes for a medal or for a big success. So the value is there for everyone.
We continue in the back.
Maxime Paquette, La Presse, Montreal. Could you tell us about the economic repercussions on the host countries and how many jobs it creates locally?
Not yet. We will have the impact study ready before the end of the year. We have collaboration in the previous World Cup was with the Big Four auditing company. Now we have a different provider that is doing this impact study, which we do for the World Cup and for our continentals. So we will have the impact of the event, and we can share the figures after that. So whatever I tell you now, I think will be based on more assumptions than a proper answer that would be appropriate for your readers. So the feedback we have received from the locals was that it really created such a traction in the local economies that was not expected, because in 2019 we didn't have the chance to have so many international or traveling fans. This time we had many. We thought we would have more, but having to push, for the reasons you know of the calendar, the draw by 4 weeks back, it cut some of the traveling fans' plans. But you know, the impact of the Latvians in Jakarta is obvious. You know, the impact of the Finns in Okinawa is obvious. We had here some traveling fans. We have seen the impact based on our day-to-day, I would say, exchanges with the locals. But I don't have figures for you now, unfortunately.
Thank you. One more question back here.
Outlets, and they publish it. Some female players that 2 months and a half were playing the finals of the Eurobasket and eventually will try to qualify for Germany 2026 say, oh, it's only for male players, what about us? Which message do you have for this reaction for these top players?
This is not a bonus, as I said, there is no prize money. This is covering the cost. This tournament is twice the duration of the Women's World Cup, and we will, of course, some of the players experience aspects that we are doing here, we will certainly do in 26. It's not an accident that we announced the ambassador of 26 2 days ago, or yesterday, in Manila. Sue Bird will be the ambassador. She was here, she was asking what level of conditions the male players have and what are our expectations for 26. It's not an accident that yesterday the Central Board of FIBA for the first time co-opted the deputy chairwoman of the Players Commission into the Central Board with Sonja Vasic. So we will have a player that was an active player until a few months ago, that has played the World Cup, that has had an Olympic medal and 2 times Eurobasket. So my answer is, this is subvention to the cost of the federation. It is not different prize money, or there's no prize money. And I believe the players that played last year in Sydney saw the difference in the playing conditions with Tenerife 2018. And I think they will see also the difference in 2026. And I also believe those who played in Slovenia and Israel this year, they saw. We had players experience for a Women's World Cup for the first time last year in Sydney, based on what we did for the men in China. And in all other aspects, I had a meeting in Sydney last year with several players. Some of them said, why did we have to do an integrity workshop here? Are the men doing it? Yes, the men did it as well. So we're quite sensitive on that. Women in basketball is a priority for us. So this is not money that is being given as a bonus or otherwise to the federations. And if our federations in the preparation for 26 World Cup have additional costs, we will also look at covering them. But sometimes we give cash, sometimes we cover it directly. We don't do this to be publicized. Of course, I know the figures take much of your attention, but we could have easily said we cover your laundry during the year, or your logistics, or your extra luggage for the event. But instead, we said for some things we just got a check. There was one there last minute.
Final question.
Yes, yeah. Yes, please go ahead.
Can we get a microphone? Thank you.
Thank you. This is Nikos Palagiannis from Gazeta Gera, Greece. What was the logic behind bringing the World Cup in Asia for the 3rd straight time? I mean, was there no interest from other continents about rotation and representation? And speaking of location, is there going to be a quota per continent in next year's OQT tournaments?
I didn't understand the last part. Is there going to be a quota on?
Per continent in next year's Olympic qualifying tournaments, on where they will play.
Okay, that was, I think, the same question that I got earlier, no? But no problem. No problem. I will respond to that as well. So, if you mean quota, whether the 4 tournaments have to be spread in 4 continents, the answer is no, they don't have to. First, we depend on who applies. I would like to be clear on one thing. At least in the last 5 years, there are no wildcards. So you cannot apply for a spot in the OQT by requesting to host. The 24 teams are fixed. Now, from a business perspective, you will tell me that's not very smart, because now I have only 24 potential hosts. But the Central Board has been very clear. We prioritize the competition aspect here than the business aspect. Willie will not be very happy with what I did. So we prioritize the competition aspect than the aspect of wildcard or coming through the window. That means we have 24 countries that can bid. We need to see then, from these 24, who applies. As of the moment that we have the applications, I think from a policy perspective, it would make sense that we're not going with all 4 in one continent. But this doesn't mean that the board or the executive committee that decides says, well, based on the conditions we have received from the bidders in respect of the players, experience on the venues, distance from the airport, all these elements that we look, maybe we go for that option or for the other option. This belongs to the executive committee to decide. That is how we look at it from a policy perspective. So no wildcards, 24 potential bidders. We will see how many we have, and then we will decide where the 4 OQTs will go. And it's not a rule that they have to be in different continents. But I do believe that from a policy perspective, perhaps they should. But we will see how this goes, this plays out. Now, with all that, I forgot your first question was on the... Why 3 straight in Asia? Well, I think I find more meaning why 2 straight in East Asia and Southeast, to be honest with you, because the third one, Qatar 27, is still in the same continent with the way we have been split 70 years ago and organized. But of course, if you look at it in today's market reality, and I'm not talking geopolitics now, I'm talking pure basketball reality as well as social reality, it is a different region. It is a different region we are coming to. We're coming for the first time into the Arab world, into western part of Asia, into the Gulf region that loves team sports. We have in the West our new league, the West Asian Super League. As I said earlier, we played in Dubai, fantastic Final 8. We see some countries are traditional in our sport. You know, Lebanon and Jordan, our sport is very strong. It is increasingly popular now in the Gulf, with Qatar, with Saudi, Bahrain now qualified through the pre-OQT into play the OQT for the first time. So Qatar is very committed, and I think personally it will be the dream of a fan, because you know where to go. Those who don't care if their team qualifies tomorrow morning, they can book their tickets, they can book their hotels. It is, yes, it's going to be hot, it's off-season, but it is going to be a tremendous basketball experience for those who love basketball. And you will be able to see all the best players in the world in the same city across 4 venues that are already existing, and what we will try to make really as sustainable as possible championship. So that is the concept behind allocating this. There was interest from other continents, there was interest also from Europe. Of course, the candidatures, some of the candidates had to deal with the COVID aspect, and as well the inflation that we had over the last month. Some governments were not providing the guarantees. So some federations from other continents came almost all the way, and then at the end said, well, we may need some more time. We had a flexible process. That was the last stop. Qatar was there, and they had a very good presentation.
Thank you. This wraps up today's press conference. Thank you very much.